The snowfall consumed everything. Sound, light, hope, all swallowed by the relentless white curtain descending over the Carpathian peaks. Lieutenant Commander Blake Harrison pressed his gloved hand against the frozen rock face, feeling the ice bite through the fabric. His breath came in controlled bursts, white vapor that vanished instantly into the storm. 600 meters to the ridge, whispered Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. The GPS unit in his hand flickered, signal degrading as the blizzard intensified. Weather's getting worse. Blake nodded, signaling the rest of his 6-man SEAL team forward. They moved like shadows through the snow, each step calculated, weapons held low. This was supposed to be reconnaissance, observe the weapons cache, confirm coordinates, extract before dawn. Simple, clean, no engagement. The mountains had other plans. They'd been inserted by helicopter 48 hours ago, dropped into a wilderness that hadn't seen American forces since the Cold War. Intelligence suggested a terrorist cell was using these peaks to smuggle advanced weapons into conflict zones. The mission: eyes only. Photograph the location. Identify the players. Get out. Movement, hissed Petty Officer Ryan Garrett from point position. His rifle came up, thermal scope sweeping the white expanse ahead. 11 o'clock. 300 meters. Blake raised his fist. The team froze, becoming part of the landscape. Through his own scope, he caught a glimpse of something dark moving against the snow. Too deliberate to be an animal, too confident to be civilian. Single, hostile, Ryan confirmed. Circling back toward the valley. Spotter, Blake whispered. His gut tightened. Spotters meant shooters. Shooters meant they'd been detected. We need to. The night exploded. Muzzle flashes erupted from positions Blake hadn't even considered. The ridge above them came alive with gunfire, tracers cutting red lines through the falling snow. His team scattered, diving for whatever cover the rocky terrain offered. Contact, multiple hostiles. Marcus's voice cracked through the team radio. We're surrounded. Blake's tactical mind processed the situation in milliseconds. The ambush was too coordinated, too well positioned. They'd walked into a kill box. Whoever set this up knew they were coming. Fall back to the ravine, Blake ordered, firing controlled bursts at the muzzle flashes above. Move, move. His team responded with the precision of years training together. Ryan laid down, suppressing fire, while Petty Officers Jake Morrison and Tyler Brooks hauled their equipment toward the narrow gorge 50 meters east. Corpsman David Walsh dragged their communications specialist, Petty Officer First Class Nathan Pierce, who'd taken a round to the shoulder in the first seconds of contact. The ravine offered minimal protection, a crack in the mountainside barely wide enough for 2 men abreast, walls of ice-covered granite rising 20 feet on either side. But it was defensible. For now. Nathan's hit bad, David reported, his hands already working to staunch the bleeding. Entry wound below the collarbone, exit clean. He'll live if we can stop the bleeding and keep him warm. Blake counted heads. 6 men, now trapped in a frozen coffin with at least 30 hostiles closing in. The storm that had hidden their approach now worked against them, turning their position into a white tomb. Radio? Blake asked Marcus. The staff sergeant shook his head, face grim. Atmospheric interference. Storms creating too much static, can't reach the FOB. Through the falling snow, Blake saw them shapes moving with military precision, encircling their position. These weren't opportunistic bandits. They were trained soldiers, equipped with night vision and modern weapons, and they were patient. High above, on a ledge no climber would dare attempt in this weather, something else moved through the storm. A figure in white, perfectly still except for the slow, deliberate movement of adjusting a rifle scope. Nobody below noticed. Nobody looked up. Lyra Quinn had been watching for 3 hours. She'd tracked the SEAL team since their insertion, staying far enough back to remain undetected, close enough to intervene if needed. She'd seen the ambush being set, watched the enemy positions being established. She'd counted 53 hostiles, all armed with stolen NATO weapons. And she'd done nothing. Not yet. Her finger rested alongside the trigger guard of her custom M2010 enhanced sniper rifle, modified for extreme cold weather operations. The scope's reticle tracked the enemy commander, a tall man directing his forces with hand signals. One shot would decapitate their command structure, but Lyra waited. Patience was the sniper's greatest weapon, Rush the shot, and you reveal your position. Reveal your position, and you die. The SEALs didn't know she existed. Better that way. She'd learned 2 years ago that trust was a luxury soldiers couldn't afford, especially soldiers who'd been erased from official records. Below, Blake Harrison made his decision. "We hold here until dawn," he told his team, voice steady despite the dire circumstances. "Conserve ammunition, treat the wounded. When the storm clears enough for radio contact, we call for extraction." "And if they rush us before then?" Jake asked, reloading his rifle with practiced efficiency. Blake's jaw tightened. "Then we make them pay for every inch." The wind carried away his words, scattering them into the darkness where 53 guns waited for the order to fire. And one hidden rifle waited for something else entirely. The first probe came at 0200 hours. 3 men, moving low through the snow, testing the ravine's defenses. Ryan dropped 2 with precise headshots before they got within grenade range. The third retreated, dragging 1 wounded comrade. "They're learning our fields of fire," Tyler observed, ejecting his magazine to check his remaining rounds. "Next time they'll come from multiple angles." Blake knew he was right. Standard infantry tactics: probe, assess, overwhelm. The question wasn't if the enemy would attack in force, but when. Nathan groaned on the frozen ground, his face pale despite David's best efforts. The corpsman had packed the wound and administered morphine, but without proper medical facilities, infection was inevitable. They needed extraction within 12 hours, or Nathan would need evacuation to a trauma center. "Try the radio again," Blake ordered Marcus. The staff sergeant cycled through frequencies, adjusting the antenna position, angling it toward where the forward operating base should be. Static hissed back at him, occasionally breaking into fragments of distant transmissions that dissolved before forming coherent words. "Nothing," Marcus finally admitted. "The storm's creating a dead zone. We're on our own." Jake laughed, a bitter sound. "Story of our lives, right?" "Stow it," Blake snapped. Morale was fragile enough without dark humor. "David, how's Nathan?" "Stable for now, but his temp's dropping. We need to get him somewhere warm, sir." "Somewhere warm?" Blake almost laughed. The temperature had plummeted to -15 Celsius, and the wind chill pushed it far lower. Even with their cold weather gear, hypothermia was becoming as dangerous as enemy bullets. "Movement! East Ridge," Ryan called out. "Multiple contacts." Blake crawled to the ravine's edge, peering through his scope. Thermal imaging showed at least 15 heat signatures spreading out along the high ground. They were taking their time, establishing overlapping fields of fire. Professional, methodical. These men had done this before. "Sir," Tyler said quietly, "we're down to maybe 400 rounds total. If they come hard." He didn't need to finish. 400 rounds among 6 men, 5 effective fighters, with Nathan out of action, meant approximately 80 rounds per man. Against 50-plus hostiles, the math was brutal and simple. The second probe came from the opposite direction, a feint designed to draw their fire and expose their positions. Blake refused to take the bait, holding fire until the enemy was within 100 meters. The disciplined response bought them time but revealed nothing they wanted hidden. They were cornered, outnumbered, and running out of options. At 0315, the enemy commander made his move. Suppressing fire erupted from 3 positions simultaneously, pinning the SEALs down while 2 fire teams advanced under cover. Blake called targets, his team responding with the automatic coordination that came from years of training. They dropped 4 hostiles, wounded 3 more, but the enemy kept coming. "Grenade!" Jake shouted. The explosive landed 10 feet from their position, bounced once on the ice, and detonated. Shrapnel screamed through the air. Blake felt something hot slice across his left arm, but adrenaline masked the pain. Tyler took fragments in his leg, cursing as he rolled behind a boulder. "Tyler's hit!" David yelled. "I'm good," Tyler insisted, though blood darkened his pants leg. "Just a scratch." It wasn't just a scratch. But they had no time to debate. The enemy pressed forward, emboldened by the successful grenade throw. Blake made rapid calculations. 2 wounded, ammunition dwindling, no support within 20 miles, weather preventing extraction. They could hold this position for maybe 2 more assaults before being overrun. His hand moved to the radio automatically, a reflex born of a career trusting in backup, in the system, in the promise that no American soldier would be left behind. Marcus met his eyes, saw the question there, and slowly shook his head. They were alone. Blake keyed the radio anyway, reducing his voice to barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might shatter what remained of their hope. Any station, this is Vanguard 6. We are under heavy fire. Coordinates. He rattled off their position from memory, knowing the transmission was probably reaching nobody. Multiple wounded, requesting immediate extract. We need backup. Static answered. Empty, meaningless static. The enemy sensed weakness, smelled blood in the water. Laser sights swept through the falling snow, red dots dancing across the ravine walls like malevolent fireflies. They were ranging, preparing for the final assault. Jake checked his ammunition, face grim. 18 rounds. 22, Ryan added. 34, Tyler said through gritted teeth. Marcus had 40. Blake himself was down to his last magazine plus one. David, focused on keeping their wounded alive, had his sidearm and nothing else. Listen, Blake said, his voice carrying the weight of command but also something else, acceptance of what was coming. Whatever happens, we hold until. He stopped. In the distance, through the swirling snow, something had changed. One of the laser sights was gone. Just gone. Then another disappeared. And then Blake heard it, a sound so faint he almost missed it beneath the wind's howl. The sharp crack of a high-powered rifle, the report muffled by distance and weather. A hostile toppled from his perch on the eastern ridge, tumbling through the snow in a boneless sprawl. Sniper, someone shouted in Russian. Blake's team tensed, expecting incoming fire, but the shots weren't aimed at them. Another crack. Another enemy down. Where's it coming from? Ryan swept his scope across the mountainside, searching for the muzzle flash. Can't pinpoint it, Marcus replied, his expression shifting from despair to confused hope. But whoever they are, they're on our side. The enemy commander had made a critical mistake. He'd assumed the Americans were alone. He'd assumed his encirclement was perfect. He'd assumed wrong. From her perch 800 meters away and 200 meters up, Lyra Quinn adjusted for wind drift, her calculations automatic after 2 decades of practice. The storm made conditions almost impossible: variable winds, heavy snowfall, obscuring vision, temperatures that affected powder burn rates and barrel expansion. Almost impossible, not quite. She'd learned to shoot in worse conditions, much worse. Her target was a man directing a heavy weapons team, trying to set up a mortar position. He kept moving, checking positions, shouting orders in Russian-accented English. Lyra led the target by 2 meters, accounting for wind, elevation, and the second it would take for the bullet to travel. She exhaled slowly, releasing half her breath, holding the rest. Her fingers squeezed, never pulled, never jerked, applying 4 pounds of gradual pressure to the trigger. The rifle spoke once. The man's head snapped back, and he dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The heavy weapons team scattered, abandoning their position in panic. Without their leader, they had no idea where the shot had originated. The storm had hidden her muzzle flash, and the sound echoed off multiple mountain faces, making triangulation impossible. Lyra cycled the bolt with mechanical precision, chambering another round. She didn't celebrate the kill or feel satisfaction. Each trigger pull was a problem solved, an equation balanced, a threat neutralized. Emotion was inefficient. She scanned for the next target. A radio man trying to call for reinforcements eliminated. A machine gunner traversing fire toward the ravine eliminated. A squad leader organizing a flanking maneuver eliminated. One by one, the pieces came off the board. Inside the ravine, Blake watched in stunned silence as the enemy force came apart. Whoever was shooting wasn't just skilled, they were impossibly, almost supernaturally good, shooting through a blizzard at night, hitting targets at extreme range, and doing it without missing. Contact with this target is impossible, Marcus muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Wind drift alone should make precision fire unfeasible. Unfeasible doesn't mean impossible, Ryan countered, tracking another hostile falling from his perch. Someone just rewrote the ballistics textbook. Jake loaded his last magazine, hope warring with confusion on his face. Who the hell is out there? Blake had been asking himself the same question. NATO didn't have assets in this sector, he would have been briefed. The host nation's military couldn't execute shots like this. They didn't have snipers at this level. Private contractors? Possible, but unlikely to intervene in an active firefight without authorization. Does it matter? Tyler asked pragmatically. "They're killing the people trying to kill us. I'm not complaining." "It matters," Blake replied quietly, "because I need to know if we're being saved or if someone's just clearing the board for themselves." As if in answer, another shot cracked through the night. An enemy soldier who'd been drawing a bead on Ryan suddenly jerked and fell, his rifle clattering down the rocks. The shot had come within 2 seconds of Ryan being exposed to hostile fire. Not random, not coincidental, someone was actively protecting them. "Defensive fire only," Blake ordered. "Conserve ammunition. Let our guardian angel work." The enemy was in chaos now, their commander dead, their heavy weapons team scattered, and an invisible predator picking them off from an unknown position. Some broke and ran, abandoning the fight entirely. Others went to ground, trying to make themselves smaller targets. A few brave or foolish ones tried to locate the sniper. They died trying. Lyra watched them through her scope, measuring their desperation. They were searching the wrong ridges, the wrong angles. Their training told them a sniper would position on the high ground with clear fields of fire, but Lyra had never been predictable. She'd positioned herself on what appeared to be an impossible perch, a narrow ledge that required technical climbing skills just to reach, offering limited cover and exposure to the elements. No reasonable sniper would choose this location, which was exactly why she'd chosen it. Her hands were cold but steady, her breathing controlled. She'd been in position for over 4 hours, barely moving, becoming part of the mountain. The cold was an old companion, familiar and almost comforting. Pain was temporary. Mission completion was eternal. Another target appeared in her scope. This one was smart, using cover, moving unpredictably, never staying exposed for more than a second. A professional. Lyra waited. Patience. The man paused for 3 seconds to signal another unit. 3 seconds was 2 seconds too long. Her rifle cracked. The man folded. Below, Marcus keyed his radio one more time, hoping against hope that atmospheric conditions had improved. The static cleared slightly, and he caught a fragment of transmission. "Vanguard 6, if you can hear this, Casevac is inbound, ETA 40 minutes. Hold your position. Repeat, hold your position." "We copy," Marcus shouted into the radio, relief flooding his voice. "We copy. Casevac inbound." Blake allowed himself a moment of hope. 40 minutes. They could hold for 40 minutes, especially with their mysterious benefactor keeping the enemy suppressed. "David, keep Nathan stable," Blake ordered. "Tyler, how's that leg?" "I'll live," Tyler replied, wincing, as David quickly examined the shrapnel wounds. "Not pretty, but I can still fight." The enemy made one final, desperate push, 8 men charging the ravine, hoping to overwhelm the defenders through sheer aggression before the helicopter arrived. Lyra dropped 3 before they covered 20 meters. Blake's team accounted for 2 more. The remaining 3 broke and retreated, disappearing into the storm. And then, silence. The gunfire ceased. The mountain held its breath. Snow continued to fall, beautiful and indifferent. Blake cautiously raised his head above the parapet, scanning for threats. "Anyone see movement?" "Negative," Ryan reported. "Thermals show hostiles withdrawing west. They've had enough." "Our sniper?" Ryan swept his scope across the mountainside, searching. Nothing. No heat signature, no visual contact. It's like they were never there. But they had been there. 27 enemy dead or wounded by Blake's count, most from precision rifle fire at impossible ranges in impossible conditions. Someone had been there, and someone had saved their lives. "Sir," Marcus said hesitantly, pointing to a rock formation 50 meters from their position. Something white fluttered in the wind, a piece of fabric, deliberately placed. Blake left the relative safety of the ravine and approached cautiously. The fabric was attached to a branch wedged between stones. Written on it in careful black marker were GPS coordinates and 3 words in English: "Weapons cache. Below ice." Blake memorized the coordinates, then pocketed the fabric. He looked up at the surrounding peaks, knowing he somehow knew it was she was watching. "Thank you," he said quietly, words carried away by wind and snow. No answer came. But as he turned back toward his team, Blake could have sworn he saw movement on a distant ridge, a white shape against white snow, there for just a heartbeat, then gone. Like a ghost. Like a legend. The mythology of snipers has always centered on patience. The willingness to remain motionless for days, to become part of the environment, to wait for the single perfect moment when all variables align. But Lyra Quinn had learned that true sniper craft wasn't just about patience, it was about reading the battlefield like a language, understanding what your enemy would do before they knew themselves. She'd been reading this battlefield for the past 72 hours. The weapons cache wasn't random, neither was the terrorist cell using these mountains. Lyra had been tracking a smuggling network for 18 months, following supply chains from manufacturers in Eastern Europe through corrupt officials in 3 countries, finally culminating here in these frozen peaks where governments rarely looked and law enforcement never reached. The SEAL team had stumbled into the culmination of her investigation. They were good men doing their job, but they had no idea how deep the conspiracy ran, how many officials had been paid off, how carefully this network had been constructed, and they definitely had no idea that one of their own had helped build it. 2 years ago, Lyra had been part of an elite CIA paramilitary unit conducting operations in denied areas. Her commander, a man named Richard Voss, had been everything she aspired to be: brilliant, dedicated, seemingly incorruptible. She'd trusted him with her life. Then she discovered he'd been selling classified information to foreign intelligence services. When Lyra reported her findings through proper channels, Voss learned of her betrayal before the investigation could begin. He'd prepared well, planting evidence that framed Lyra as the traitor. Within 48 hours, she'd gone from decorated operative to most wanted fugitive. She'd had 2 choices: surrender and face prison for crimes she didn't commit, or disappear and prove her innocence from outside the system. She chose to disappear. For 2 years, she'd lived in the shadows, tracking Voss's network, documenting every transaction, every weapon shipment, every death resulting from his betrayal. She'd become a ghost story, a rumor whispered in intelligence circles, the operative who couldn't be killed because she no longer existed. And tonight, that ghost story had saved 6 lives. From her concealed position, Lyra watched the SEAL team prepare for extraction. The corpsman was doing good work, keeping the wounded stable. The team leader, she'd identified him as Lieutenant Commander Blake Harrison from his tactical communications, was maintaining discipline and order despite their circumstances. Professional, competent, exactly the type of soldier she'd once served alongside. The type she could no longer trust. Lyra began breaking down her hide sight, carefully erasing all evidence of her presence. The rifle went into a weatherproof case. The spent brass casings were collected and pocketed. The snow where she'd lain was disturbed to eliminate her body impression. In 10 minutes, no forensic investigator would ever know someone had been here. She was preparing to descend when her satellite phone vibrated an encrypted message on a channel only 3 people in the world knew existed. She checked the screen. The message was from her former handler, a CIA officer named Patricia Chen, who'd helped Lyra escape when Voss had sprung his trap. Patricia had risked her career to provide Lyra with clean documentation, money, and most importantly, a way to communicate securely. The message was brief: Voss in country. Meeting suppliers tomorrow 0600. Same cache location you marked. Confirm? Lyra's jaw tightened. Richard Voss, here. The man who'd destroyed her life, who'd sold out American assets, who'd gotten at least 15 people killed that Lyra could document and probably dozens more she couldn't. Finally, after 2 years of hunting, he'd made a mistake. He'd gotten comfortable, believing Lyra was either dead or too afraid to surface. He was coming here personally to inspect a major weapons transfer, confident in his security, confident in his network. His confidence would kill him. Lyra typed a 1-word response: confirmed. Then she looked back toward the ravine where the SEALs were now loading their wounded onto the arriving Casevac helicopter. Blake Harrison stood apart from his team, scanning the mountains one last time. He was looking for her. She knew he would be. Good commanders always tried to understand all the pieces on the board, but Blake would never find her, because Lyra had learned to move between the pieces, to exist in the negative spaces where oversight didn't reach. The helicopter lifted off, rotor wash, creating a temporary whiteout. When the snow settled, the ravine was empty. The SEALs were gone, returning to their world of official missions and authorized operations. Lyra turned away and began her descent toward the weapons cache. She had 18 hours before Voss arrived. 18 hours to prepare an ambush for a man who taught her everything she knew about tactical operations. A student versus teacher scenario. Winner takes all. Loser doesn't leave the mountain. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a lonely sound that seemed fitting. Lyra had always worked alone. She preferred it that way. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. But as she disappeared into the storm, she thought about the SEAL team she'd just saved. Thought about the clean efficiency of their operations, the loyalty they showed each other, the way they'd held position against overwhelming odds. She'd once been part of something like that, once belonged to a team that would die for each other. For just a moment, in the white silence of the mountain, Lyra Quinn allowed herself to remember what that had felt like. Then she pushed the memory aside and focused on the mission. Sentiment was weakness, emotion was inefficient, and tomorrow, she was going to kill the man who'd made her this way. Blake Harrison sat in the debriefing room at the forward operating base, trying to explain something that shouldn't have been possible. The angle was impossible, he said for the third time to the intelligence officers across the table. Shooting through a blizzard at night, hitting targets at 800+ meters, accounting for wind drift and elevation changes, you'd need computer-assisted targeting, and even then, and yet someone did it, interrupted Major Sarah Mitchell, the senior intelligence officer. She scrolled through the incident report on her tablet, frowning. 27 confirmed enemy KIA, all from precision rifle fire. Your team fired maybe 40 rounds total. Someone else did the heavy lifting. You're saying we had an angel, Marcus Chen added from his position against the wall. He'd refused to sit, too wired from the mission to relax. Question is, whose angel? Major Mitchell pulled up a photograph on her tablet, rotating it so Blake could see. The image showed a woman in her mid-30s, dark hair, sharp features, eyes that suggested dangerous competence. Do you recognize this person? Mitchell asked. Blake studied the photograph. Something about the woman seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. Should I? Her name is Lyra Quinn, former CIA Special Activities Division. One of their best field operatives specializing in direct action missions and counter-terrorism operations. Former? Blake picked up on the key word. She disappeared 2 years ago, Mitchell explained. Officially listed as missing, presumed dead. There was an investigation into classified leaks that pointed to her as the source. Before she could be questioned, she vanished completely. Ryan Garrett leaned forward. You think she's the one who saved us? The ballistic evidence matches her documented skill set, Mitchell said carefully. And there have been rumors. Unconfirmed reports of a Western-trained sniper operating independently in this region over the past year. Ghost stories. Really enemy combatants found dead from impossible shots, weapons shipments that mysteriously never reached their destinations, high-value targets eliminated with no credit claimed. If she's alive and operating alone, why save us? Blake asked. What's her angle? Mitchell closed her tablet. That's what we need to find out. Commander, your team has 48 hours recovery time, then I need you to return to those coordinates she provided. The ones marked on the fabric. The weapons cache. Exactly. If Quinn is still in the area, and if she's focused on that location, there's a chance we can make contact. Find out what she knows, what she wants, and whether she's an asset or a threat. Blake exchanged glances with his team. They were all thinking the same thing. They'd just survived an ambush by the skin of their teeth, and now Command wanted them to walk back into the same mountain range to chase a ghost. With respect, ma'am, Blake said slowly, if this woman doesn't want to be found, we won't find her. She's had 2 years to perfect being invisible. Then make her want to be found, Mitchell replied. You're the people she saved, Commander. If she'll trust anyone, it's you. 20 miles away, in a cave system that didn't appear on any map, Lyra Quinn was preparing for war. The main weapons cache was larger than she'd expected, crates of stolen military hardware worth millions on the black market. RPGs, night vision equipment, encrypted communication gear, even shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. Enough firepower to supply a small army. Or to shoot down civilian aircraft. Lyra photographed everything methodically, documenting serial numbers and manufacturing codes. Each piece of evidence was another link in the chain, connecting Richard Voss to multiple crimes. When this was over, if she survived, this documentation would prove her innocence and his guilt. If she survived, Voss wouldn't come alone. He'd bring security, probably a team of mercenaries he'd recruited from various special operations communities. Men who'd gone private for the money, who'd set aside questions of right and wrong in favor of whoever paid best. She'd be outnumbered at least 10 to 1, possibly worse. But she had advantages: they didn't: terrain knowledge, preparation, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary. Lyra set her first trap near the cave entrance, a simple tripwire connected to a claymore mine she'd borrowed from one of the weapons crates. The mine was angled to create a kill zone covering the main approach. Anyone triggering it would have approximately 1 second to regret their carelessness. The second trap was more subtle: pressure plates beneath seemingly stable snow, calibrated to detonate only under the weight of multiple people walking in formation. Mercenaries moved predictably, maintaining proper spacing and covering each other. Their training would kill them. By dawn, she'd created a maze of lethal surprises. Every approach was covered, every position measured and ranged. She'd even rigged the weapons crates themselves to explode if disturbed, deny Voss his prize and his escape route in one move. Finally, she climbed to her primary firing position, a ledge 300 meters up with clear sightlines to the entire valley. From here, she could control the battlefield, picking targets at will while remaining virtually undetectable. The sun was rising when her satellite phone buzzed again. Another message from Patricia Chen. Thermal satellite shows convoy, 8 vehicles, approaching from the south. ETA, 90 minutes. You're outnumbered at least 40 to 1. Lyra, please reconsider. Come in from the cold. Let us handle Voss. Lyra typed her response. Can't risk him talking his way out again. Needs to end here. She powered off the phone and removed its battery, making herself electronically invisible. No communications meant no way to call for help, but it also meant no way for Voss to track her signal. All or nothing. Winner takes all. As she settled into her firing position, Lyra thought about the SEALs she'd saved. They'd probably been debriefed by now, told about her supposed crimes, warned she was dangerous. Standard procedure when dealing with rogue operatives. They'd never know the truth. Never know she'd given up everything: career, identity, any hope of normal life to stop a traitor from causing more death. The wind shifted, carrying the distant sound of engines. Voss was coming. Lyra chambered around and controlled her breathing, becoming part of the mountain once more. The legend was about to become very, very real. The convoy consisted of 8 heavy vehicles, armored SUVs designed to withstand small arms fire and IED explosions. Expensive. Professional. Exactly what Lyra expected from Richard Voss. Through her scope, she counted occupants, 43 men, all armed with modern weapons. The lead vehicle carried Voss himself. She recognized his profile even at this distance. He'd aged in 2 years, gained weight, but his posture remained military straight. Once her commander, now her target. The convoy halted 200 meters from the cave entrance, forming a defensive perimeter. Smart. They weren't rushing in. Voss had taught Lyra to always assume ambush, to never trust an empty battlefield. His own lessons would trap him. A 10-man team dismounted and began advancing toward the cave, using proper tactical spacing and covering each other's movements. Professionals, probably former Tier 1 operators who transitioned to private security for the money. Lyra didn't judge them. She'd almost made the same choice herself, back before Voss's betrayal. The point man crossed the tripwire at 0614 hours. The claymore detonated with a flat crack, sending 700 steel balls through the kill zone at lethal velocity. The point man and 2 others behind him were shredded instantly. The remaining 7 dove for cover, returning fire toward where they thought the mine had been positioned. Wrong direction. Lyra hadn't positioned the mine, she'd positioned the tripwire, placing it 15 meters offset from the actual explosive. Their suppressive fire hit nothing but snow. Before they could reassess, she took her first shot. The team leader, identifiable by his hand signals and position, dropped with a neat hole through his chest. Lyra had aimed for center mass, not risking a headshot in these wind conditions. Her rifle cycled smoothly, chambering another round. She didn't wait to confirm the kill. Dead men didn't need confirmation. Second shot, the radio man trying to call for support. He fell, clutching his throat, the radio tumbling into the snow. Third shot, a mercenary with a grenade launcher. The explosive threat needed elimination before he could range her position. The remaining 4 scattered, finally understanding they were in a sniper's scope. They tried to retreat to the vehicles, laying down suppressive fire as they moved. Lyra dropped 2 during their retreat. The final two made it to cover, diving behind an armored SUV. 8 seconds had elapsed since the Claymore detonation. 4 men dead, 2 wounded, 4 retreating. At the convoy, chaos erupted. Voss was shouting orders, trying to organize a response. Half his force wanted to charge the cave, thinking the ambush came from inside. The other half wanted to pull back, recognizing they were in a kill zone. Indecision was deadly on a battlefield. Lyra shifted targets, focusing on the vehicles themselves. Her ammunition was armor-piercing, designed to penetrate light vehicle plating. She aimed for engine blocks, disabling their escape. 4 shots, 4 vehicles rendered immobile. Coolant and oil poured onto the snow, mixing in toxic puddles. Voss made his decision: charge forward, overwhelm the position through superior numbers. It was the tactically sound choice given his forces and firepower. It was also exactly what Lyra expected. 20 mercenaries advanced in 2 teams, providing mutual support and covering fire. They moved well, using terrain features for protection, never staying exposed for more than seconds. But Lyra had ranged every boulder, every dip in the terrain, every piece of cover. She knew exactly where they'd position, how they'd move. Her rifle spoke methodically, 1 shot approximately every 7 seconds. Each trigger pull was a mathematical equation: range, wind, elevation, target movement solved and executed with machine precision. 5th shot, flanking element commander. 6th shot, heavy weapons specialist carrying an anti-material rifle. 7th shot, another team leader. The advance faltered as officers fell. Soldiers could fight without orders, but coordinated tactics required leadership. Remove the leaders, and you remove the coordination. 8th shot, 9th shot, 10th shot, each one finding a target, each one dropping a threat. The remaining mercenaries went to ground, trying to make themselves smaller. Some returned fire, but they were shooting at shadows, wasting ammunition on empty mountainside. Lyra paused, giving them false hope, letting them think the shooting had stopped, that maybe the sniper had withdrawn. 3 men broke cover, sprinting for better positions. 11th shot, 12th shot, 13th shot executed within 15 seconds. The message was clear: movement equals death. Stay still, and you might live a little longer. At the convoy, Voss was screaming into a satellite phone, calling for his own backup. But Lyra had already considered this. The nearest reinforcements were 90 minutes away, and the mountain pass was blocked by an avalanche she'd triggered yesterday with carefully placed explosives. No help was coming, not for him. 14th shot, the communications officer trying to establish a relay link. 15th shot, a mercenary attempting to flank wide around the killing zone. 16th shot, someone trying to set up a mortar. 20 minutes into the engagement, Voss had lost 19 men. The remainder were pinned, unable to advance or retreat, slowly being eliminated by an enemy they couldn't see or fight. This was snipercraft at its purest: psychological warfare, married to technical expertise. Every shot demoralized the survivors more than the last. Every fallen comrade reinforced their helplessness. 17th shot, 18th shot, 19th shot. Lyra worked through targets with the patience of an executioner. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, no emotion. These men had made choices that led them here. They'd chosen to work for a traitor, to facilitate weapons smuggling, to prioritize profit over ethics. Choices had consequences. 20th shot, a brave but foolish mercenary trying to charge her suspected position. He died 50 meters into his run. 21st shot, another officer attempting to organize a retreat. The resistance was crumbling. The professional mercenaries were breaking, abandoning positions, running for their lives. Voss was losing control of his force, watching his carefully assembled team disintegrate under precision fire. 22nd shot, a fleeing mercenary. 23rd shot, another runner. Only Voss and 3 loyal bodyguards remained combat effective. They'd formed a defensive position behind 2 vehicles, keeping low, minimizing exposure. Smart, but insufficient. Lyra shifted her point of aim, targeting the vehicle's gas tank. Her armor-piercing round punched through the metal, igniting fuel vapors. The explosion threw all 4 men clear, stunned but alive. Exactly as intended. She descended from her perch rapidly, moving with practiced efficiency down the cliff face. Her rifle was slung across her back, pistol drawn. This needed to be up close, personal. By the time she reached the burning wreckage, the 3 bodyguards were unconscious from the blast. Voss was on his hands and knees, ears bleeding from overpressure, trying to crawl away. Lyra planted her boot in his back, forcing him flat against the snow. She drew her pistol and aimed at his head. "Lyra?" Voss's voice was distorted from ruptured eardrums. "You're alive?" Disappointed? She pressed the pistol against his skull. "You tried hard enough to kill me." "I never wanted you dead," Voss coughed, blood on his lips. "Just out of the way. You were too loyal, too honest. I couldn't trust you to look the other way. So you framed me instead. Business decision, nothing personal." Lyra's finger tightened on the trigger. 2 years of hunting, 2 years of living in exile, and it came down to this one trigger pull, and her nightmare ended. But something stopped her. Not mercy, not compassion, something else. "The documentation," she said quietly. "Every transaction, every shipment, every death caused by your network. I have proof of all of it. Kill me now, and that evidence goes public. But surrender, and maybe you live long enough to make a deal." Voss laughed, a wet, painful sound. "You think they'll believe you? You're a fugitive, Lyra. A traitor in their eyes. Then I guess we both better hope I'm convincing." She zip-tied his hands and hauled him to his feet. The 3 bodyguards were stirring, groaning. She secured them too, efficiently and without comment. 25 men eliminated, 4 captured, mission complete. Almost. She activated her satellite phone, powering it up for the first time in 18 hours. Immediately, it buzzed with multiple messages, all from Patricia Chen, increasingly urgent. The most recent one made Lyra's blood freeze. "SEAL team returning to your location. Orders to establish contact. If they find you with Voss, situation becomes complicated. Recommend immediate exfil." Lyra checked her watch. The SEALs would arrive in approximately 20 minutes. She looked at Voss, then at the evidence she'd spent 2 years collecting, then at the mountain pass where American forces would soon appear. Decision time. Trust the system that had betrayed her, or disappear back into the shadows? The legend of the ghost sniper had one more chapter to write. Blake Harrison's team moved through the mountain pass with weapons ready and senses sharp. Intelligence had been vague about what they'd find at the coordinates. Lyra Quinn had provided a weapons cache, certainly, but possibly much more. They found a battlefield. Bodies littered the snow, 25 men dead from precision rifle fire, executed with clinical efficiency. Burning vehicles created pillars of black smoke visible for miles, and in the center of the carnage, 4 men lay zip-tied and unconscious. "Clear!" Ryan called out, sweeping the area with his rifle. "No active threats!" Marcus knelt beside one of the zip-tied men, checking his pulse. "Alive. They're all alive." He pulled back the man's jacket, revealing body armor with insignia from a private military company. Mercenaries. Professional grade. Blake examined the tactical situation with growing amazement. Whoever had done this had orchestrated a perfect ambush, overlapping fields of fire, trapped approaches, psychological manipulation through shot placement. This wasn't combat, this was art. "Sir, you need to see this," Jake called from near one of the vehicles. Inside, Blake found a satellite phone, still connected to an active call. He picked it up cautiously. "This is Lieutenant Commander Harrison, United States Navy. Identify yourself." A pause, then a woman's voice. "Patricia Chen, Central Intelligence Agency. Is Lyra Quinn present at that location?" "Negative. We have multiple hostiles neutralized, 4 in custody, but no sign of Quinn." Another pause, longer this time. Blake could hear background noise, other voices, keyboard typing. Chen was in an operations center somewhere, making real-time decisions. "Commander Harrison," Chen said carefully, "the man you have in custody is Richard Voss, formerly a CIA officer. He's wanted for espionage, treason, and multiple counts of murder. The evidence proving his crimes is in your vicinity. Portable hard drives containing 2 years of documented transactions. You need to secure that evidence immediately." "Where's Quinn?" Blake asked bluntly. "I don't know," Chen admitted. "She was here 15 minutes ago. But Lyra has a habit of disappearing when official personnel arrive. She doesn't trust the system anymore. And given what happened to her, I don't blame her." Tyler found the hard drives in a weatherproof case, carefully hidden beneath a tarp near the cave entrance. He held them up for Blake to see. Got 'em. Blake returned his attention to the phone. Miss Chen, I need the full story. Who was Lyra Quinn? Really? What happened 2 years ago? The line was silent for nearly 10 seconds. Blake waited, knowing Chen was deciding how much to reveal. 2 years ago, Chen finally said, Lyra Quinn was one of our best field operatives. Brilliant, dedicated, the kind of officer who made everyone around her better. She worked under Richard Voss in our Special Activities Division, conducting operations in denied areas. What changed? Lyra discovered Voss was selling classified information to foreign intelligence services. She reported it through proper channels, following protocol exactly as she'd been trained, but Voss had cultivated relationships throughout the agency. He knew about her report before the investigation could begin. Blake felt his jaw tighten. He'd seen corruption before, but betrayal from within the intelligence community was especially poisonous. Chen continued. Voss planted evidence framing Lyra as the traitor. Fabricated communications, falsified financial records, even staged dead drops that implicated her. Within 48 hours, she went from decorated officer to fugitive. She had 2 choices: surrender and face prison for crimes she didn't commit, or run and try to prove her innocence from outside. She chose to run. She chose to survive, Chen corrected. And for 2 years, she's been documenting Voss's network, tracking every transaction, every weapons shipment, every bribe. The evidence on those hard drives will prove her innocence and destroy Voss's operation completely. Blake looked around the battlefield again, seeing it with new understanding. This wasn't revenge, this was justice, executed by someone the system had failed. Why save my team? Blake asked. She could have let us die, let the enemy kill us, would have made her job easier. Because despite everything, Chen said softly, Lyra Quinn still believes in the mission, still believes in protecting innocent lives. The system betrayed her, but she never betrayed the values she swore to uphold. Marcus approached, holding something else. He'd found a small notebook, pages filled with meticulous handwriting. Sir, this is a log. Dates, times, locations, names. 2 years' worth of surveillance on weapons trafficking networks. Blake flipped through pages, recognizing the obsessive detail of someone building an airtight case. This wasn't the work of a traitor. This was the work of a patriot with no country left to serve. Chen, Blake said into the phone, we need to bring her in. Officially, clear her name, restore her position, give her back the life Voss stole. I agree completely, Chen replied. But Lyra doesn't trust us anymore. She's been hunted by the same government she served, branded a traitor by the same agency that trained her. Even with this evidence, she's not convinced she'll get a fair hearing. Then, we make her convinced, Blake said firmly. My team owes her our lives. That counts for something. 300 meters away, concealed in a snow-covered depression, Lyra Quinn watched through her rifle scope as the SEALs secured the scene. She'd stayed longer than was smart, lingering to ensure Voss was properly restrained and the evidence was discovered. Part of her wanted to trust them, wanted to believe that Blake Harrison and his team would see justice done. But trust was a luxury she'd lost 2 years ago. Through her scope, she watched Blake examining her notebook, saw him speaking on the satellite phone. His body language suggested earnestness, concern, maybe even respect. A good man doing a difficult job. But good men had failed her before. Lyra began her withdrawal, moving with the same ghost-like silence that had defined her existence for 24 months. The mountain welcomed her back, offering concealment and solitude. She'd left the evidence. She'd left Voss. She'd done everything she could to ensure justice would be served. Now it was up to the system to do its job. If they failed again, if Voss somehow walked free through connections and corruption, then Lyra would return. And next time, she wouldn't leave witnesses. As she disappeared into the wilderness, she thought about the SEAL team one final time. Thought about what it had felt like to protect them, to use her skills for something unambiguously good. For a moment, she'd felt like a soldier again instead of a ghost. It was a good feeling. She hoped it wasn't the last time. Blake Harrison stood in the cave entrance, staring at enough military hardware to start a small war. RPGs, anti-tank missiles, encrypted radios, night vision systems, all NATO equipment, all stolen or diverted through Voss's network. "This is worse than we thought," Marcus said, photographing serial numbers with a tactical camera. "These weapons were supposed to be destroyed after the Afghan withdrawal. Someone in the supply chain diverted them instead." "Voss?" Blake asked. "Has to be. He'd have the access, the connections, the knowledge of how to move this much hardware without triggering audits." Tyler limped deeper into the cave, his wounded leg bandaged but functional. "There's more back here. Looks like a whole second chamber." Blake followed, ducking under low-hanging ice formations. The second chamber was smaller but somehow more disturbing: crates of ammunition, explosive materials, even chemical agents in sealed containers. "Those are phosphorus incendiaries," Ryan identified, keeping his distance from the toxic materials. "Banned by international convention. Using these would be a war crime." Voss wasn't planning to use them, Blake realized. He was planning to sell them, to whoever would pay, regardless of what they'd use them for. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just weapons smuggling, this was enabling terrorism, war crimes, mass casualties. Every weapon that left this cave could kill dozens or hundreds of innocent people, and Lyra Quinn had stopped it, alone. "We need to destroy all this," Blake decided. "Rig the cave with explosives, collapse the whole thing. Can't risk any of it being salvaged." "Agreed," Marcus said. "But we should document everything first. This evidence needs to reach the right people." They spent the next hour photographing and cataloging, creating an exhaustive record of Voss's betrayal. Each crate opened revealed new horrors: weapons that should have been destroyed, systems that should have been secured, technology that should never have reached hostile hands. While they worked, Jake guarded the 4 prisoners. Voss had regained consciousness, his expression cycling between rage and calculation. He was already planning his defense. Blake could see it: lawyers, classified information claims, procedural delays. Men like Voss always had contingency plans. "You can't prove anything," Voss said suddenly, breaking his silence. "I have diplomatic immunity, classified operations cover, protection from—" "Shut up," Jake interrupted pleasantly. "Sir, should I gag him?" Blake considered it, then shook his head. "Let him talk. Everything he says is being recorded. Might as well let him dig his own grave deeper." Voss fell silent, finally understanding that his situation was deteriorating. They rigged the cave with explosives taken from the weapons stockpile, using Voss's own materials to destroy his operation. Poetic justice, Blake thought. The charges were placed strategically to collapse the cave without triggering an avalanche that might threaten the valley below. "Charges set," Tyler reported. 30-minute delay once we trigger it. Should give us time to get clear." "What about her?" Ryan asked, voicing what they were all thinking. Quinn might still be in the area. Blake had been wondering the same thing. Lyra Quinn had saved their lives, given them evidence against Voss, and then vanished like smoke. She was out there somewhere, watching, waiting to see if the system would finally do its job. "She's gone," Blake said with certainty. "If she wanted to be found, we'd have found her. She's giving us space to clean this up." "Think she'll ever come in?" Marcus asked. Blake looked out at the mountain wilderness, endless white peaks under a clearing sky. Somewhere in that vastness, a woman who'd given up everything for justice was watching them. "I don't know, but I hope so. She deserves better than living as a ghost." They extracted the prisoners and evidence, calling for helicopter evacuation. As the rotors approached, Blake took one last look around the battlefield. 25 men dead, an international smuggling operation destroyed, a traitor in custody. All because one woman refused to quit. The helicopter touched down, loading prisoners and evidence. Blake was the last to board, and before he did, he turned to face the mountains. He couldn't see Lyra Quinn, doubted anyone could unless she wanted to be seen, but he knew she was there. Blake raised his hand in a salute, holding it for 3 seconds, then climbed aboard. The helicopter lifted off, gaining altitude. Blake watched through the window as the cave entrance grew smaller, insignificant against the massive landscape. 30 minutes from now, the explosives would detonate, erasing Voss's arsenal forever. Mission accomplished. But Blake couldn't shake the feeling that the real story was still unfolding somewhere in those mountains, written by a woman who'd become a legend by refusing to surrender her principles. The cave collapsed at 1,447 hours, exactly on schedule. The explosion was impressive, but controlled, demolishing the weapons cache without triggering a wider avalanche. Tons of rock and ice buried Voss's arsenal, sealing it away from human access for probably decades. Blake watched the distant plume of snow and debris from the helicopter, feeling satisfaction tinged with unease. They'd won tactically, prisoners secured, evidence gathered, mission accomplished. But something felt incomplete. "Fuel warning," the pilot announced. "We need to head back to the FOB." Blake nodded, but his attention remained on the mountains below. Somewhere in that wilderness, Lyra Quinn was alone, hunted by her own government, with nowhere safe to go. It didn't sit right with him. "Commander," Marcus said quietly, following Blake's gaze. "You can't save everyone." "I know, but she saved us. We owe her more than just flying away. She chose this life, chose to stay outside the system." "Did she?" Blake challenged. "Or did the system force her out and she just made the best of impossible circumstances?" Marcus had no answer for that. Back at the FOB, Blake submitted his after-action report to Major Mitchell, detailing everything they'd found. The evidence against Voss was overwhelming: documentation, physical materials, recorded conversations, an airtight case. "This is excellent work, Commander," Mitchell said, reviewing the files. "Voss will spend the rest of his life in prison. His network is destroyed. You've done this country a significant service." "What about Quinn?" Blake asked directly. "She's the one who did the heavy lifting. She deserves recognition, not continued persecution." Mitchell's expression became guarded. "The Quinn situation is complicated. There are people in Washington who want to prosecute her despite this evidence. Political considerations, bureaucratic inertia, careers that might be damaged if her innocence is acknowledged." "That's bullshit," Blake said bluntly. "Sir." "It is," Mitchell agreed surprisingly. "But it's the reality we're dealing with. Patricia Chen is advocating for Quinn internally, using your testimony and the evidence you recovered. But it's going to take time, weeks, maybe months. And in the meantime, Quinn stays in the cold? Unless she chooses to come in voluntarily. But given her history, I don't see that happening." Blake stood, frustrated. "So we just abandon her? Let her keep living as a fugitive while bureaucrats argue about admitting they were wrong? We do our jobs, Commander. We submit our reports, testify when called, and trust the system to eventually work. That's all we can do." But that wasn't all Blake could do. That night, using a secure satellite phone in a communications blackout zone where official monitoring didn't reach, Blake placed a call to Patricia Chen at CIA headquarters. "Commander Harrison," Chen answered immediately. "I was expecting your call. You know about Quinn's situation, the politics, the delays, the bureaucratic cowardice. How do we fix it? Officially, we wait for the investigation to conclude, the review board to exonerate her, and the system to restore her status. Unofficially," Chen paused, "we make it impossible for Washington to ignore her. We build public pressure, leak information to sympathetic journalists, force the story into the open, where political considerations become secondary to doing the right thing." "And Quinn? Does she know about this plan?" "I've tried to contact her," Chen admitted, "but she's not responding to my messages anymore. I think she's given up on us, Commander. Given up on the idea that justice will ever be served." Blake thought about the woman he'd never met but somehow felt connected to. A soldier who'd lost everything but kept fighting anyway. A legend who deserved better than to fade away into myth. "Give me her contact protocol," Blake said. "I'll try reaching her." "She won't answer," Chen warned. "She doesn't trust anyone in uniform anymore." "Maybe. But she saved my team. That creates a debt, and I always pay my debts." Chen provided the encryption keys and satellite phone frequency Quinn monitored. Blake composed a message, keeping it simple and direct. "This is Blake Harrison, the SEAL commander you saved. Voss is in custody. Evidence is secure. But Washington is playing politics with your exoneration. Patricia Chen is working the internal channels. I'm working the external ones. You don't have to stay invisible. You don't have to stay alone. You earned the right to come home. We've got your back. Just say the word." He transmitted the message into the void, knowing it might never be read, might never be answered. But he had to try. 300 miles away, in a mountain shelter that didn't appear on any map, Lyra Quinn's satellite phone vibrated with an incoming message. She almost ignored it. Chen had been sending messages for days, each one promising justice that Lyra no longer believed in. But this message wasn't from Chen. Lyra read Blake Harrison's words twice, 3 times, looking for the trap, the manipulation, the betrayal she'd learned to expect. But the message was straightforward, honest, offering something she'd stopped dreaming about, a way home. Could she trust it? Trust him? Her rational mind said no. Trust was how people got hurt, got killed, got betrayed. She'd survived 2 years by trusting no one, believing in nothing except her own skills and instincts. But her heart, the part she'd tried to suppress for so long, whispered something different. Whispered that maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. People who paid their debts. People who did the right thing even when it was hard. Lyra's finger hovered over the reply button. 2 years of running. 2 years of isolation. 2 years of being a ghost. She was tired. So incredibly tired. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to believe in something again. She began typing a response. The extraction point was a clearing 40 miles from the weapons cache, chosen for its remoteness and defensibility. Blake insisted on going alone, no team, no backup, just him and a helicopter on standby. If Lyra Quinn was going to trust anyone, it would be because she chose to, not because she was cornered. This is a terrible idea, Marcus said for the 3rd time as Blake prepared to depart. She's been hunted for 2 years. She might see this as a trap. It's not a trap, Blake replied, checking his sidearm. It's an invitation. You're risking your career on a woman who's legally a fugitive. I'm honoring a debt to a woman who saved my life. There's a difference. The helicopter dropped Blake at the clearing at dawn, exactly as he'd specified in his message to Lyra. The pilot promised to return in 4 hours, unless called earlier. Blake watched the helicopter disappear, leaving him alone in the wilderness. The waiting was hard. Blake had been in combat situations where hours passed with nothing happening, where patience was the difference between success and failure. But this was different. This was personal. He'd brought coffee, 2 thermoses, both still hot, and a folder containing copies of all the evidence against Voss, plus Patricia Chen's internal memos advocating for Lyra's exoneration. Proof that the system was finally starting to work. 2 hours passed. The sun climbed higher, burning away the morning mist. Blake waited. 3 hours. He drank coffee, reviewed the documents again, scanned the tree line for movement. He was beginning to think she wasn't coming when he heard a voice behind him. You came alone. Blake turned slowly, hands visible and empty. Lyra Quinn stood 15 feet away, rifle slung across her back, but pistol holstered. She looked different from her official photographs, harder, leaner, eyes that had seen too much. But also alert, competent, dangerous. You said to come alone, Blake replied evenly. I don't break promises. Most people do. I'm not most people. They studied each other across the clearing, 2 soldiers from different worlds meeting in neutral ground. Blake could see the calculation in Lyra's eyes, measuring threat, evaluating sincerity, deciding whether to trust or disappear. I brought coffee, Blake said, gesturing to the thermoses, and evidence, everything we found, everything that proves Voss guilty and you innocent. Evidence doesn't matter if they've already decided I'm guilty, Lyra said. But she moved closer, curiosity overcoming caution. It matters to the people who want truth over convenience. Patricia Chen is one of them. I'm another. There are more of us than you think. Lyra accepted the offered thermos, opening it and inhaling the steam. For a moment, her guard dropped, and Blake saw the exhaustion beneath the hardened exterior. This woman had been running for 2 years, fighting alone, trusting no one. Why do you care? Lyra asked suddenly. You got what you needed, Voss in custody, evidence secured, mission accomplished. You could have flown away and never thought about me again. Because I was taught that we don't leave people behind, Blake said simply. You saved my team. That creates a bond, whether you want it or not, and because what happened to you was wrong. Someone needs to say that out loud. Lyra was quiet for a long moment, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. When she spoke again, her voice was softer, more vulnerable. I was good at my job, really good. I believed in the mission, trusted the system, did everything by the book, and the moment I reported wrongdoing, the system I trusted destroyed me. She looked at Blake directly. How do I trust it again? How do I walk back into that world? You don't trust the system, Blake said. You trust individuals. Chen, me, the people who are fighting for you. We're not perfect, and we can't guarantee everything will work out. But we can guarantee we'll stand with you when it matters. And if Washington decides politics are more important than justice, then we go public. Leak everything to journalists who'll tell your story. Force them to choose between doing the right thing and being exposed for corruption. Make it impossible for them to sweep you away. Lyra smiled slightly, the first genuine emotion Blake had seen from her. That's practically sedition, Commander. It's practically necessary, Blake countered. Sometimes, the system needs people willing to break its rules to remind it why those rules exist in the first place. The sun was fully up now, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose. It was beautiful, the kind of beauty that reminded Blake why they fought, why sacrifice mattered, why some causes were worth any price. I've been alone a long time, Lyra said quietly. I'm not sure I remember how to be part of something bigger. You never forgot, Blake assured her. You proved that when you saved my team, you could have let us die, would have made your mission simpler. But you didn't, because you still believe in protecting the innocent. That's not something you forget. That's who you are. Lyra was quiet again, and Blake waited, giving her space to make her decision. This had to be her choice, made freely, without pressure or manipulation. Finally, she spoke. If I come in, if I trust you and Chen and this process and it goes wrong, if they arrest me and Voss walks free. She left the threat unfinished but clear. Then I'll break you out myself, Blake said with absolute sincerity. I'll burn my career, violate every regulation, and make sure you get justice even if I have to deliver it personally. That's my promise to you. Lyra studied his face, searching for deception, finding none. Whatever she saw there satisfied her, because she nodded once, decisively. Okay. I'll come in. But on one condition. Name it. When this is over, when my name is cleared and Voss is in prison, I want to disappear again, really disappear, not as a fugitive, but as a civilian. No more agency, no more operations, no more war, just peace. Can you arrange that? Blake thought about it, then nodded. I can arrange that. You've earned it. Lyra extended her hand. Blake shook it, feeling the calluses of someone who'd lived rough, fought hard, survived impossible odds. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you, Blake replied, for saving my team, for not giving up, for still believing in something worth fighting for. They walked back to the extraction point together, and when the helicopter arrived, Lyra didn't hesitate. She climbed aboard, leaving behind 2 years of isolation and fear, choosing to believe in trust one more time. As they flew toward the forward operating base, Blake saw her looking out the window at the mountains, her home for so long, now just landscape passing beneath them. Any regrets? Blake asked. One, Lyra admitted. I wish I could have saved all of them, all the people Voss hurt, all the innocents who died because of weapons he smuggled. 25 men I killed to stop him, that's justice. But it doesn't erase the hundreds who died before I could intervene. You can't save everyone, Blake said, echoing Marcus's words from days before. No, Lyra agreed. But you can try, and maybe that's enough. The helicopter banked toward the base, carrying a legend who'd chosen to become human again, who decided that trust was worth the risk, that coming home mattered more than staying safe. Below them, the mountains stretched endlessly, white and pristine and eternal. Somewhere in those peaks, the story of the ghost sniper would become myth, exaggerated and embellished until truth and legend became indistinguishable. But Blake knew the truth. He'd met the woman behind the legend, seen her vulnerability beneath the competence, understood that heroes were just people who chose to do hard things when no one else would. Lyra Quinn had been one of those people. And now, maybe, she could rest. The helicopter touched down at the FOB, where Patricia Chen waited with lawyers, investigators, and the beginning of justice finally served. Lyra took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped into the light. The legend had come home, and somewhere in Washington, Richard Voss sat in a cell, realizing that the woman he'd tried to destroy had instead destroyed him, piece by careful piece, until nothing remained but his crimes and his guilt. Justice, delayed but not denied. The end of one story. The beginning of another.